In this flow, we will explore how to initialize and manipulate a Boolean variable in Power Automate. Boolean variables are used to store true or false values, and are essential in controlling the logic of a flow, such as when to proceed with an action or branch into a different path. We will walk through the process of initializing a Boolean variable, toggling its value, and using it to control flow conditions. For each operation, we'll also add compose actions to debug and verify the value of the Boolean at different stages. Additionally, we'll cover best practices for using Boolean variables in flow control. Initializing the flow. To get started, create a new flow in Power Automate. Navigate to your Power Automate dashboard and click Create. Select Instant Cloud Flow to manually trigger the flow and name it Boolean Variable Manipulation Example. Choose the trigger, Manually trigger a flow to make it easy to test the flow during development. Initializing a Boolean variable. To initialize a Boolean variable, click the plus button and select Add an action. Search for Initialize Variable and select it. In the action settings, name the variable myBoolean. Set the type to Boolean. Set the initial value to true. This will create a Boolean variable called myBoolean with an initial value of true. Best practice. Initializing Booleans. When working with Boolean variables, it's important to initialize them with a value that makes sense in the context of your flow. For example, starting with true or false could control whether certain actions should run, and initializing it correctly can prevent unwanted behaviors. Debugging the initial value. Before performing any manipulations, it's a good practice to check the initial value of the Boolean. To do this, add a compose action to your flow. In the input field, select myBoolean from the dynamic content pane. Name this action Initial Boolean Value. Best practice, debugging. Always use compose actions to track the state of your variables as the flow progresses. This helps verify that the variable is behaving as expected at each stage. Save and test your flow. Once the flow finishes running, you should see the value true in the initial Boolean value output, confirming that the variable was initialized correctly. Toggling the Boolean value next, we will toggle the value of the Boolean variable. Toggling means switching the value from true to false or vice versa. This is commonly used in situations where a process alternates between two states. To toggle the value of myBoolean, add another set variable action to your flow. Choose myBoolean as the variable to update. In the value field, describe the operation. Set the Boolean value to false. This will change the value of myBoolean to false. Name the action Toggle Boolean Value. Best practice. Toggling Booleans. Boolean toggling is especially useful when dealing with switches or flags in your flow. For example, you could use a Boolean variable to alternate between processing two different actions based on its true or false state. It's a simple but powerful tool for flow control. Debugging after toggling. To check that the Boolean value has been correctly toggled, add a compose action after the set variable action. Select myBoolean as the input. Name this action Debug After Toggle. Save and run the flow again. After execution, check the output of the Debug After Toggle action. It should now display false, confirming that the value was toggled successfully. Using a Boolean in a condition. Now that we've manipulated the Boolean value, let's use it to control the flow using a condition action. A condition allows you to take different actions depending on whether a condition is met. In this case, whether the Boolean is true or false. To add a condition, click the plus button and select Add an Action. Search for condition and select it. In the first box, select My Boolean from the Dynamic Content pane. Set the condition to is equal to true. In the If Yes branch, add a compose action that says, the Boolean is true. In the If No branch, add a compose action that says, the Boolean is false. Best practice: using Booleans in conditions. Boolean variables are often used in conditional logic to control whether certain actions are executed or skipped. For example, you might use a Boolean to determine if an email should be sent or if a record should be updated. Always make sure that your condition logic is clear and easy to follow. Debugging the condition. Now we'll check whether the condition correctly evaluates the Boolean value. Save the flow and run it again. Once it finishes, check the outputs of the condition action. If the Boolean was true, the If Yes branch should be triggered, and you should see the message, the Boolean is true, in the output. If the Boolean was false, the If No branch should be triggered, and the output will show, the Boolean is false. This confirms that the Boolean variable is being used correctly to control the flow logic. Resetting the Boolean. To demonstrate the versatility of Booleans, let's reset the Boolean variable back to true at the end of the flow. To do this, add another set variable action. Set the variable to My Boolean. In the value field, enter true. Name the action Reset Boolean to true. Best practice: resetting Booleans. It's often a good idea to reset Boolean flags at the end of a flow or after certain actions. This ensures that your flow will run with the correct initial conditions the next time it's triggered, avoiding unexpected behaviors in subsequent runs. Debugging. After resetting, finally, add one more compose action to display the reset value of the Boolean variable. Select My Boolean as the input. Name this action Debug After Reset. Save and run the flow one last time. After it completes, check the output of the Debug After Reset action. It should display true, confirming that the Boolean has been reset successfully. Conclusion: in this flow, we covered the initialization and manipulation of Boolean variables in Power Automate. Specifically, we looked at initializing a Boolean variable with a default value, toggling the Boolean between true and false, using the Boolean in a condition to control the flow logic, resetting the Boolean to its original state. We also added compose actions throughout to debug and monitor the values of the Boolean variable at each step. By following these practices, you can effectively use Boolean variables in your flows to implement dynamic and conditional logic. Boolean variables are simple yet powerful tools for flow control, and understanding how to use them correctly is crucial for creating efficient and flexible automations.